They say love is the most beautiful thing in the world. But no one ever warns you that sometimes love doesn't just heal, it destroys. If I had known how far love could stretch before it snaps, I would have built a wall around my heart. My name is Claire, and this is the story of the greatest mistake I ever made in the name of love. A mistake that gave life to a miracle and nearly destroyed every person it touched. My sister Grace was always the one people admired. Beautiful, poised, gentle, the kind of person everyone trusted instantly. She got married young, just 20, and to a man who adored her, Daniel. For the first few years, everything seemed perfect, but behind their smiles was a secret pain that grew heavier each year. Grace couldn't conceive. 11 years passed, and still no baby. 11 long, exhausting years of hospital visits, herbal treatments, prayers, fasting, and tears that no one saw. I watched my sister change. The light in her eyes faded. The girl who once laughed at everything now cried over nothing. Being around her became exhausting, like standing in a room filled with fragile glass. One wrong word and she'd shatter. Still, I loved her deeply. She was my big sister, the person who once brushed my hair before school and defended me when I got into trouble. Watching her suffer felt like slowly drowning beside her, unable to help. I got married 3 years after Grace. My husband, Michael, was a quiet, hard-working man. Our life was simple but peaceful. Exactly 1 year after our wedding, I gave birth to our first child, a baby boy. I still remember the feeling of his tiny hand gripping my finger for the first time. It was as if my heart had found a new rhythm. When Grace came to visit, she arrived with gifts. Baby clothes, toys, food, everything. She stayed with us for 5 days, doting on my son every minute. But there was something strange in her eyes, a tenderness mixed with deep, aching sorrow, like she was holding joy that didn't belong to her. A few months later, she came again. That evening, Michael was away on a work trip, so it was just the two of us. We sat together in the living room, reminiscing about childhood memories, when suddenly Grace began to cry, not softly, like before, but deep, painful sobs that shook her whole body. I rushed to her side, terrified. "Grace, what is it? What's wrong?" She grabbed my hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Claire," she said, "can I ask you for a favor?" "Of course," I said. "What is it?" Her next words broke me. "Can you give me a child?" For a moment I thought she meant adoption or maybe surrogacy. I tried to smile through the confusion. "Grace, don't say that. You'll have your own children one day. Just have faith." But she shook her head desperately. "No, you don't understand. I want you to have a baby for me, with your husband, and when the baby is born, give the child to me." I froze. My breath caught in my chest. "What? Grace, that's impossible." She went on her knees, gripping my hand tighter. "Please, Claire. I can't live like this anymore. I can't stand the pity in people's eyes. I need a child. Please, help me." Her words tore through me. This was my sister, my blood, begging for something no one should ever ask for. That night I didn't sleep. Her voice kept echoing in my mind. "Please, Claire, please." Days passed, weeks. I tried to push it out of my head, but love is a strange thing. It makes you blind to reason, deaf to logic. And I loved her too much. So, against every instinct, against every rule of nature, I said yes. I agreed to give my sister my own child. We planned it like a secret mission, carefully, quietly, as if the walls had ears. "When you get pregnant," Grace said, I'll pretend to be pregnant too. We'll plan everything together. Our due dates will match. When you give birth, I'll take the child, and you'll tell Michael the baby died." My heart pounded as she spoke. It felt like we were building a house on a fault line, pretending it would never shake. But I told myself this was love, a sacrifice for my sister's happiness. A few months later, I discovered I was pregnant again. Michael was overjoyed, but every time he kissed my growing belly, guilt twisted inside me like a knife. Then came the twist, one that even Grace hadn't expected. The doctor smiled at me after my ultrasound and said, "Congratulations, Mrs. Adams. You're carrying twins, 2 tiny lives, 2 beating hearts." When I told Grace, she burst into tears of joy. "Oh my God, Claire, this is a miracle. God has doubled my blessing." But soon joy turned to greed. "Let me take both," she said one night over the phone. "They're twins." "They belong together," I hesitated. "Grace, no. That wasn't the deal. You can take one, but I'm keeping one." Her silence on the phone was cold and heavy. Finally, she said, "Fine." 1. Then the months passed slowly. Each kick inside me reminded me of what was coming, the love I would have to give away. The day I went into labor, the world spun around me in pain and panic. Hours later, I heard the cries of 2 newborn boys, identical, beautiful, perfect. When Grace held one of them, she sobbed uncontrollably. "Thank you, Claire. You've given me life." I forced a smile, but inside I was hollow. As she carried my baby out of the hospital, I felt a piece of my soul being ripped away. That night, lying beside my husband, watching the other twins sleep in his crib, I whispered a silent prayer. "Please, God, let her love him as much as I do." But deep down, a quiet voice whispered back, "You just made a deal with heartbreak." Grace's new pregnancy became the talk of the family. She began wearing loose dresses, pressing a pillow under them in private so she could memorize the weight. Every month she called to ask, "Have you felt the baby kick yet?" And when I said yes, she whispered, "Then so have I." I played along, smiling on the phone while crying into my pillow afterward. The lies multiplied faster than I could control them. When I finally gave birth, she appeared at the hospital the next morning, dressed in pastel, radiant as dawn. Our families never suspected anything. They believed both sisters had gone into labor almost the same day. 2 baby boys were born, both healthy and strong. I named the one I kept Ethan. She named the one she took Noah. The nurses teased us. Double blessings, twin cousins born hours apart. Grace and I exchanged a look only we understood. That night, when she carried Noah out of the ward, the world seemed to go silent. The sound of her heels faded down the hallway like the closing of a door I could never reopen. Back home, I tried to lose myself in caring for Ethan, feeding him, singing to him, watching him breathe. But every time he smiled, I wondered if Noah smiled the same way somewhere else. 2 halves of one miracle, torn apart by secrecy. A few weeks later, Grace called. Her voice overflowed with joy. "Claire, Daniel can't stop smiling. He holds Noah all night. You should see him. Everyone says he looks exactly like Daniel." I laughed softly, because of course he didn't. But I let her dream. Months later came Noah's dedication ceremony. I attended quietly with Michael, pretending to be the proud aunt. The church was filled with music and laughter. People danced, snapping photos, shouting blessings. Grace wore white, glowing with a kind of happiness I'd never seen before. When she held Noah high, tears ran down her face. And me? I stood at the back, sunglasses hiding the tears that refused to stop. In that moment, I told myself it was worth it. If this was what peace looked like, her smile, Daniel's laughter, the sound of a child in their arms, then maybe I could live with my emptiness. But peace built on deception never lasts, and happiness borrowed from someone else always comes due. 9 months after Noah's dedication, Grace called me again, this time screaming so loudly I thought something terrible had happened. "Claire, I'm pregnant. I'm really pregnant." I froze, the phone pressed to my ear. "You mean naturally?" "Yes, the doctor confirmed it. Claire, it's a miracle." She laughed and cried all at once, words tumbling over each other. "You won't believe it. Daniel can't stop thanking God. He says Noah opened the heavens for us." I congratulated her, but my hands shook the whole time. Because deep inside, I knew it was true. Noah, the child she didn't bear, had broken the curse. Her pregnancy went smoothly. 9 months later, she had a baby girl. A year after that, another child, a boy. I watched from a distance as Grace's house filled with laughter and toys. It should have made me happy. Instead, it hollowed me out. The sister I had saved no longer called me as much. Her messages became shorter, colder. The gratitude in her voice faded, replaced by something sharper, something almost like resentment. Then one afternoon she invited me over. It had been months since we'd spoken properly, so I took Ethan and went. When she opened the door, Noah ran past her, barefoot, clothes dirty, a small bruise on his cheek. He looked nothing like the tidy little boy I remembered from his dedication photos. My breath caught. "Grace, what happened to him?" She shrugged, irritation flashing in her eyes. "He's stubborn. Never listens. Always running around breaking things. I'm sick of him," I stared at her. "He's just a child." "Don't start," she snapped. "You have no idea how difficult he is." For the rest of the visit, she barely looked at him, scolding him over the smallest things. He flinched every time she moved. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of that little boy's frightened eyes haunted me.
The following month, I went back unannounced. Grace opened the door, clearly annoyed. "Claire, you could have called first." But I wasn't listening. My eyes went straight to Noah. He was thinner, his hair uncombed, his arms covered in faint cane marks. He didn't smile when he saw me. He only whispered, "Aunt Claire," and lowered his head. My stomach twisted. "Grace," I said quietly, "why does he look like this?" She crossed her arms. "Because he's impossible. He doesn't listen. He lies. He fights his siblings. He's a problem child." "He's your son," I cried. Her expression hardened. "Is he? You of all people should remember where he came from." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Grace, you promised to love him." "And I did," she said coldly, "until I realized he isn't mine." "Not really. Every time I look at him, I see you. I see the secret I have to live with. Maybe that's why I can't stand him." I was speechless. From that day, things got worse. Whenever I visited, Noah looked more withdrawn, more broken. Grace celebrated birthdays for her 2 biological children, balloons, cakes, music. But on Noah's birthday, there was silence. He sat on the steps outside, watching his siblings blow out candles through the window. Each time I saw him, guilt burned deeper into my chest. I begged Grace one evening, "If you can't love him, let me take him. He deserves peace." She laughed bitterly. "And what will you tell Michael? That you gave away his child to me 11 years ago? You know your husband, Claire. You know what that would do to your marriage." Then she leaned close, voice like venom. "Since you refuse to give me both twins, this one will suffer for it." That night I drove home shaking. Michael asked why my eyes were red. I told him I was just tired. But when I closed my eyes to sleep, I dreamed of Noah calling for me, his small hands reaching through darkness. Night after night, the dream returned, his voice weaker each time, whispering, "Mommy, help me." The guilt became unbearable. I couldn't eat, couldn't laugh, couldn't breathe without feeling his pain. I had sacrificed my child for love, and that love had turned to cruelty. And deep inside, I knew I couldn't keep my secret much longer. Because some truths, once buried, start clawing their way back to the light.
Weeks passed, but the nightmares stayed. Every night, I saw Noah standing at the end of my bed, barefoot, eyes wet, whispering for help. Every morning, I woke with tears on my cheeks and guilt heavy on my chest. Michael noticed. He'd touch my shoulder softly and ask, "Claire, what's wrong?" And I'd smile and say, "Nothing, I'm fine." Even though my heart was falling apart, the silence was eating me alive. One evening, after another call from Grace filled with shouting and complaints about Noah, something inside me cracked. I hung up, sat on the floor beside Ethan's bed, and cried until I could hardly breathe. When Michael came in, I couldn't hide it anymore. He knelt beside me. "Claire, please tell me what's going on." "You've been fading right in front of me," I wanted to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. "How do you confess a secret that could destroy everything you've built?" That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling. By 2 a.m. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't keep living in this lie, not when my child was suffering. So I shook Michael gently. "Wake up," I whispered. He blinked at me, confused. "What is it?" My hands trembled. "I need to tell you something terrible." I knelt on the floor beside the bed, tears streaming down my face. "Michael," I said, "before you hear this, please know that I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing something good. I thought I was saving someone I loved." He sat up slowly, his expression changing from worry to fear. "Claire, what are you talking about?" And then, between sobs, I told him everything. The night Grace begged me, the pregnancy, the lie about the baby's death, the twin I'd given away. By the time I finished, the room was silent except for my crying. Michael just stared at me like he was trying to understand whether I was real. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, shaking. "So, Noah is my son." I nodded, unable to look at him. He stood up, pacing the room. "I don't even need proof," he said. "We'll do a DNA test if we have to, but I already know." "That woman, your sister, she's evil." Then he stopped and looked down at me. "And you, Claire? You broke my heart, but at least now you've told me the truth. Let's get our child back." The determination in his voice both terrified and comforted me. At dawn, we dressed in silence and drove to Grace's house. My hands shook on my lap the whole ride. When we arrived, Daniel opened the door, surprised to see us so early. Grace came out of the kitchen, her face draining of color when she saw Michael beside me. "Good morning," Michael said coldly. "We're here for my son." Grace tried to laugh. "What are you talking about?" I stepped forward. "Grace, please. Don't do this." "We both know the truth." Daniel looked between us, confused. "Grace, what is she saying?" Michael turned to him. "For 11 years you watched your wife cry because she couldn't conceive. Then suddenly she had a baby. My baby. Because my wife gave him up for her. She thought she was saving her sister. But your wife repaid that love with cruelty." Grace's face crumpled. "Claire, stop. You'll ruin everything." Michael's voice thundered through the room. "The least you could have done was love that boy. But instead you beat him, humiliated him, made him feel unwanted. That child gave you the joy you begged God for, and you repaid him with pain." Daniel's jaw dropped. He turned toward Grace, horror written all over his face. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, from the hallway, a small voice said, "Mommy?" Noah stood there, rubbing his eyes. When he saw me, he hesitated, recognition flickering somewhere deep inside him. Michael knelt, tears glistening. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. "We've come to take you home." Grace didn't stop us. She just stood frozen as Michael lifted Noah into his arms and walked out. The sound of the front door closing was the sound of a secret finally ending. At home, I couldn't stop crying. Michael put Noah to bed, then came back and sat beside me on the couch. He took my hands, his eyes softer now. "For years," he said, "I thought I was a good husband. But the fact that you believed I'd hate you for telling me the truth, that means I failed you." I shook my head. "No, I failed you." He pulled me into his arms. "Listen to me. You made a terrible choice, yes, but you did it because you loved your sister. From today, we start over. No more lies." Those words broke the last wall around my heart. I cried in his arms until dawn. The next few weeks were slow healing. Noah barely spoke at first. He avoided eye contact, flinched at sudden noises, and often woke screaming from nightmares. But Ethan, his twin, became his anchor. The boys shared toys, secrets, even a room. It was as if they'd been waiting for each other all their lives. One evening I found them sleeping in the same bed, their hands clasped together. I stood there quietly, tears running down my cheeks. Finally, both halves of my heart were under one roof. Grace called a month later. Her voice was small, shaky. "Claire, Daniel knows everything. He said he forgives me. I don't deserve it." She paused. "I want to ask for your forgiveness too." I took a long breath. "Grace, I forgave you the moment I took Noah home. But we can't go back to how things were." "I understand," she whispered. "I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." When the call ended, I sat on the porch watching my sons chase fireflies in the yard. Ethan laughed loudly, and for the first time, Noah laughed with him. Michael came out, wrapped an arm around me and said, "You see that? That's what healing looks like." I leaned into him. "It still hurts, sometimes." "It will," he said. "But pain doesn't mean you're broken. It means you cared." The sky faded to gold, and I thought about everything we had lost and everything we had regained. Grace would always be my sister, but the bond we once had was gone, replaced by something distant and fragile. I prayed she would find peace one day, just as I was beginning to. As for me, I finally understood what love really meant. Not sacrifice without boundaries, not silence in the face of wrong, but truth, even when it hurts. I watched my boys, two hearts that had been separated by lies but reunited by love, and whispered a promise only they could hear. "You'll never be apart again. Not while I live."